What I want to do is begin just a short series to see how long it'll last. If there is interest, it'll last. If there isn't, it shall not. On some of my favorite hymns and psalms. I want to play a verse or two of these hymns, and then I want to talk a little bit about the theology of it. I'm going to play it obviously a little slower than how it should be sung, and most hymns should be sung fairly triumphant. I want to play it slowly on the guitar so you can, first of all, follow the guitar chords if you are a guitar player, but also so that you can hear certain words differently, so that you can hear the rhythms and the way the tune is shaped to fit the lyrics. And you can do that a lot better when you play it relatively slowly, paying attention to the emphasis and the accentuation of each word. My first one is Now shall my inward joys arise, to the tune Africa. The words are by William Billings, written in the 18th century. Here's verses 1 and 6. Now shall my inward joys arise, and burst into a song. Almighty love inspires my heart, and pleasures tune my tongue. Deep on the palms of both my hands I have engraved her name. My hands shall raise her ruined walls and build her broken frame. This is a lovely hymn. I don't think I've ever sung through all 6 verses without weeping. And we're going to be singing this as a closing hymn on Sunday at the congregation where I pastor. It's going to be quite a challenge for me. But what I love about this hymn is it is a hymn that speaks to the sense of undeniability of the praise of God's people. A better way to phrase it is that there is a certain inescapability to joy for the Christian. Now shall my inward joys arise. We can put a sort of external dimension to our joy, but true biblical joy sort of begins and it's stirred within. And here the writer is saying, I think I mentioned it was William Billings, but actually this is a text from Isaac Watts. Here the writer is saying that this joy can't remain internalized or privatized. It needs to make a public demonstration. Now shall my inward joys arise. Now let it be made known in public. And not just a kind of timid joy, but here it says, let it burst into a song. This is very psalmic language here being used here in this hymn. Let it burst, let it explode, let it come out in biblical music. Let it not remain in the within internal piety of the Christian, but let it be shown publicly. Let us hum it, let us sing it, let us speak of it, let us congregate together and express this joyful song. What's the rationale for that? It's because the almighty love, and very rarely do you find a hymn that sort of divinizes love, but here it is, it's almighty love. It's not just a regular, trivial, superficial love. It's a love that comes from within, but a love whose genesis begins in heaven, where the Almighty lives. Almighty love. a love that transcends our earthly reality, a love that comes down to us and changes us in every way. Almighty love inspires my heart, gives credence to my creed, gives credence to my passions and desires and rituals. Love from God comes and changes us in such a way that we must externalize our affections. It inspires my heart. And the pleasures of this inspiration, it tunes my tongue. And here you may be incapable of carrying a tune the way you envision, but here it gives a kind of tuning to our tongue that defies our ability to sing correctly. It defies our natural tendencies, our imperfections. It sort of reminds me of Romans 8 when it says that when we can't pray the way we ought, the Spirit comes and sort of translates our intercessions and brings it in a pure form before the Father. Here is the same sort of premise here, that the almighty love of God inspires our heart, and the pleasures of it tunes our tongue, makes our singing acceptable to God and pleasing to God. And then in verse 6, and we're skipping here an enormous amount of beauty that I wish I could just dig into, but just for the sake of time, I want to keep these under 10 minutes. Verse 6, deep on the palms of both my hands. Right, the biblical imagery here is a posture of praise. Deep on the palm of both my hands. Again, the emphasis of verse 1 is that this internal reality is manifested. Deep on the palms of both my hands, this posture of adoration, I have engraved her name. And here we're speaking here of a kind of engraving that can be washed away with water and soap. It's an engraving here that is permanent. And here the songwriter is talking about the engraving our loyalty to the church, engraved her name to Sion, which for us in the New Covenant is translated as our church, the place where God abides, where his presence is when we gather as God's people. I have engraved the church's name. I carry with it the responsibility of being a member of it, an ambassador of it, of embracing this headquarters of God's kingdom. I have engraved Zion's name on my hands, from where adoration stems and goes into the world. And then it says, my hands shall raise, that in times of complication, times of uncertainty, even as we live right now, my hands shall raise her ruined walls, which reminds me of another hymn, the church's one foundation is Jesus Christ, her Lord. And it says that even when people attempt to destroy her, the adoration of God's people will raise her ruined walls. No matter how much she has been persecuted, her message has been mocked and scorned, the adoration of God's people will raise her ruined walls and build her broken frame. We're asking ourselves all sorts of questions. Is the church going to survive through this period? Is the church going to endure whatever she is facing? The gates of hell shall not prevail against it. How does it not prevail? When the people of God raise their hands in adoration and worship before the triune God. That in itself, that builds whatever brokenness finds itself in the church. Only the worship of God's people restores the proper name of God. And in and through the worship of God's people, when God's people's voices, the inward voices arise, when that happens, the gates of hell shall not prevail. Now shall my inward joys arise, the tune Africa, written by Isaac Watts. Thanks for listening.